most often thought of as a forage fish. In this episode of the Species Spotlight, we are looking at an absolute fan favorite, Trophy Yellow Perch. If you've ever had a traditional Midwestern fish fry, you know exactly why these fish are in such high demand. They are incredibly delicious. They bite all year round, even through the ice, and they're a blast to catch. But there is a catch. Growing Trophy Yellow Perch in a small private pond is one of the toughest challenges in all of fisheries management. If you just toss them in your pond and hope for the best, they are going to reproduce like crazy, eat all the food, and stop growing entirely when they hit around 6 inches or so. Nobody wants a pond full of stunted fish, so today we are going to cover the exact pond prep, feeding strategies, and predator control methods you need to turn your pond into a trophy perch paradise. Now, before we get into the exact blueprint for creating that trophy paradise, we need to take a step back and look at the big picture. Before you back that stocking truck up to your pond, you have to know what you're signing up for. First, the pros. Yellow perch are incredibly hardy in cold climates. If you live up north where warm water fish struggle in the winter, perch will thrive. They actively feed under the ice, giving you a year-round fishery. They are also incredibly resilient when it comes to oxygen. If your pond freezes over and oxygen levels drop dangerously low, yellow perch can actually survive conditions that would, completely suffocate, bass, bluegill, or trout. And of course, their firm, white, flaky meat is second to none. Now the cons, yellow perch reproduce at an astonishing rate. If you don't control their abundance, they will overpopulate your pond and stunt. They are also prone to parasites, and they do not do well in extreme southern heat. That sensitivity to heat brings us to our very first and arguably most crucial step in pond preparation, making sure your fish actually have a comfortable place to live. Let's talk about your water. Yellow perch are a cool water species. Their optimal temperature range for growing and digesting food is between 68 and 75 degrees. If your water gets above 80 degrees in the peak of the summer, they get stressed, stop eating, and their immune systems can become compromised. If you live in the south, this means your pond needs to be relatively deep, usually at least 15 feet or so. The perch can dive, down into that cool, deep water refuge during July and August. Spring-fed ponds are perfect for this because they keep the temperature, somewhat stable. You also need good aeration. While perch can survive in low oxygen situations, their potential is significantly reduced in low oxygen. To keep them digesting that, premium fish food you're feeding them, you need your dissolved oxygen levels above 5 parts per million or milligrams per liter. A good aeration system will eliminate chances of a DO crash. In warmer climates where they need deeper, cooler water, it's important to not disrupt their thermal refuge with a bottom diffused aeration system. The entire point of a diffused aeration system is to, completely destroy that thermocline, which is good in most cases. But if you have cool water species such as the yellow perch in a warmer climate, bottom diffused aeration systems will eliminate any thermal refuge. So if you're south of their typical range, you'll want to stick with surface aeration. This way you're thoroughly aerating the top while leaving the cooler water alone. Lastly, perch are visual hunters. If your pond looks like chocolate milk because of suspended clay, they won't be able to efficiently find their food. You might need to apply an aluminum-based coagulant such as aluminum sulfate or some type of gypsum to clear up the water. You'll also want to check your alkalinity. Make sure it is 50 parts per million or higher, preferably around 100 parts per million for best buffering capacity. If the alkalinity is lower than 50, the pH will be erratic and stress them out. I have an episode that goes into depth about the importance of alkalinity and how it affects the pH and how to increase it. Having pristine, highly oxygenated water is a great foundation, but even perfect water won't save your pond if it turns into an underwater jungle. If you've watched my Pondweed Problems playlist, you know how dangerous out of control vegetation can be. When it comes to yellow perch, weed control is critical for your trophy goals. Why? Because submerged weeds provide hiding spots for baby perch. If your pond has more than 20 to 30% weed coverage, too many baby perch will successfully hide from your predators. If they survive, they eat all the food and you're left with thousands and thousands of stunted perch. You have to keep your weeds strictly controlled. Watch out for floating mats like duckweed and water meal, which can, cover the surface and cut off oxygen supply, or underwater nightmares like southern naiad, coontail, Eurasian water milfoil, curly leaf pondweed, you name it. When treating these, use the right chemical cocktails and never treat the whole pond at once, or you'll cause an oxygen crash. You can learn all about how to control those pond pests in my Pondweed Problems playlist on my channel. With your water quality dialed in and your weeds controlled, now it's time to fatten them up. All right, you want some jumbo yellow perch? You have to feed them. Duh. A trophy perch needs a relentless, highly calibrated caloric input. You should set up an automated fish feeder on your bank, like a Texas Hunter fish feeder, and broadcast a premium quality floating fish food. The floating pellets let you see the fish eating so you know how fast and how much they're eating so you can calibrate your feeder to match their demand. But don't just buy the cheapest food at the food store. You need a premium diet, ideally made from real fish meal. Now, I'm not a mathematician by any means, but when you actually look at the conversion rates of pounds of food consumed to pounds of weight gained, it's actually cheaper when you go with a premium quality fish food, such as Endurance. It just takes a lot of the cheap stuff to grow a fish a pound. Some recommend feeding them in the mornings when the water is cool, which is fine, and I also feed them, 3 more times throughout the day. If you're only feeding them once a day, there's only so much they can eat at one time before they get full. So by spreading out the feed times, they can digest their meal and be ready for another feeding, a few hours later. I mean, really, if your goal is to grow trophy yellow perch, don't you think that feeding them a high protein fish food multiple times a day would only help? Yeah, I think so too. Oh, and here's a fun fact. Making sure they are fed a healthy daily ration of food actually helps their bodies produce specific proteins that protect their cells from heat shock. So by feeding them well, you aren't just making them big, you are physically helping them survive the stressful summer heat. But let's be real, even the best supplemental diet isn't enough on its own if you want to push these fish to their absolute genetic limits. You also need to give them a plethora of their favorite natural forage. Pellets are great and everything, but a balanced ecosystem needs natural forage too. Before you stock your perch, load the pond up with fathead minnows and golden shiners. They breed fast and provide an immediate high protein snack. The fathead minnows will probably get wiped out within a few months, maybe a year, but they jumpstart the perch's growth. The golden shiners grow a bit larger so they can actually avoid being eaten right away, establishing a food source that will last longer than the fatheads. You'll want to stock 10 pounds of fathead minnows per acre and also 10 pounds of golden shiners per acre. Finally, the secret weapon. Crayfish, crawfish, mud bugs, mini freshwater lobsters, whatever you want to call them, are an incredible superfood loaded with calcium that will pack mass and girth onto your perch. Just be sure to avoid destructive species like the red swamp crayfish that can dig holes in your dam. No bueno. Stock at a rate of 50 pounds per acre to establish a solid population. You know, if that seems a little bit too much, I will stock them at 50 pounds per littoral acre, which is the shallow area around the shoreline of your pond. You can measure your littoral acreage with a bathymetric map or even just using Google Earth. So you've got the perfect water, good habitat, and an all-you-can-eat buffet of pellets and natural forage. But remember what I said earlier about how fast these fish reproduce? If you stop here, you're setting yourself up for a pond full of runts. Okay, listen up, because this is the most important part of the video. Yellow perch are going to reproduce if you have suitable habitat. A single female can lay upwards of 10 to 40,000 eggs. If you don't control those babies, your perch are destined to stunt. The most reliable way to control them is with an apex predator or a combination of predators. Typically, smallmouth bass and walleye are stocked in combination with yellow perch. With the goal of growing trophy yellow perch, you got to get rid of that mindset and sacrifice growing trophy smallmouth. Side note, if you're interested in trophy smallies, check out the smallmouth bass episode on my channel. Okay, back to trophy yellow perch. You'll want to stock smallies at a higher rate, you know, between 50 and 100 per acre. I would start at the lower end of the scale, but if you notice they're not effectively controlling the perch, you can stock some more at any time, really. But before you stock the smallmouth bass, you want to stock the walleye, or you can do it simultaneously, just as long as the smallmouth bass aren't big enough to eat the young and dumb walleye. Walleyes are prone to stressors during and after stocking, which inevitably increases their mortality rates within a few weeks of stocking. So if you want to ensure a solid population of walleyes, stock fingerlings at a rate of 100 to 250 per acre. But hold on, before you decide to stock walleyes, I've got an even better fish that does exceptionally well in smaller ponds and tastes just as good as walleye, the Saugeye. The Saugeye is a hybrid between a male sauger and a female walleye. Its hybrid vigor promotes explosive growth. They can even survive in warmer climates and have been known to do, very well as far south as the panhandle of Texas. I've seen them grow from little fingerlings to 18 inches in less than 2 years. Traditionally, they were only stocked in state and federal impoundments, but luckily for you, a good friend of mine has begun producing and selling them to private pond owners. FYI, he also has some of the highest quality genetic strains of smallmouth bass and yellow perch. If you want to learn more about managing Saugeye in your pond, go to the Species Spotlight playlist on my channel for the Saugeye episode. You'll want to stock the Saugeye at the same rate as walleye, between 100 and 250 per acre. Now there is a catch to adding all these predators to the mix. Those apex predators won't just stick to eating the baby perch, now will they? With your pond full of hungry predators, you'll need to pay extra close attention to your forage base. The smallmouth and walleye or saugeyes will also eat the fathead minnows and golden shiners. This makes it a critical task to provide them with plenty of high density habitat and around 20 to 30% coverage of aquatic vegetation, and making sure you're providing the perch with plenty of that supplemental fish food. When pushing the limits of a natural ecosystem, it can require supplemental stockings of forage fish to keep up with the demand. You can also stock an alternative forage fish to kind of alleviate the predatory pressure on the fatheads and shiners. I like to stock red ear sunfish for a prey source for the smallmouth bass. They don't reproduce as heavily as the bluegills do, and they help control aquatic parasites because they eat snails, which are the main vector for many parasites and diseases. Guess what? I also have an episode about growing trophy red ear sunfish. You might as well check that episode out too while you're at it. You want to stock red ear sunfish at a rate of 250 per acre.
Hey, sorry everyone, I forgot to mention the stocking rate for yellow perch during the original recording. So for a new pond, we want to stock 50 to 100 fingerlings per acre. If you stock your bait fish in the spring, stock your yellow perch in the fall. Or if you stocked your bait fish in the fall, wait until the following spring to stock your yellow perch. On the other hand, if you have a pond with existing predators, you'll want to stock 100 to 250 advanced intermediates per acre. You'll want to stock your bait fish the same day, right before, kind of as a distraction, so the existing predators do not prey upon the newly stocked yellow perch.
It sounds like a lot of moving parts, and it is, but when the muck settles and you pull a fat giant perch out of your own backyard pond, you'll know every single step was worth it. Maintaining the balance between predator and prey, keeping your vegetation under control, providing high density habitat, running quality aeration, and feeding a premium diet will ensure your success. Be disciplined about your pond, sample your fish often, and remove the ones that aren't performing. If you gained something from this video, I would greatly appreciate it if you would hit that like button and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Check out the rest of the Species Spotlight playlist if you're interested in managing other fish, species, and take a look at the Pondweed Problem series if you are battling nuisance algae or vegetation. Remember, you don't need a PhD or a master's degree to master the science of pondology. It's your pond, so don't let anyone tell you what you can and can't do with it. You can create your dream pond. You can be your own biologist.